Hi, this is Kevin Trainer, and welcome to my tutorial on loading the textbook files from the Murach MySQL second edition textbook on your Windows 10 computer so you can use them with MySQL and MySQL Workbench. This is primarily a um recording that's going to be for the students in my class. Other YouTubers that find their way here, I think, are going to be disappointed, but you're welcome to stay. Um, so, uh, if you haven't previously installed the MySQL server or Workbench, there's a tutorial for that. So you're going to want to stop this one and back up and make sure that you get everything properly installed. Then you can come back and join us here. Okay, so let's talk about the data that we're going to load. Okay, we're going to load the data from the second edition of the Murach textbook. And the second edition of the Murach textbook is on its final legs. The third edition is out very recently. I'll probably use the third edition next semester. And what I've done for the current semester is to create a set of files for you to download. And so there's a link on our weekly schedule for the Murach 2E second edition files. So you go there and click, and let's see. We're doing this in the Edge browser, and we're just going to say save. And it's going to bring it down to downloads. Okay. And then that's it for the browser. And I'm going to go down, I'm going to open the File Explorer. And let's go to Downloads. And we've got a lot of things that we download, but among the things that we downloaded, we have these Murach 2E files. Well, that's great. So first we want to unzip them. Okay. And to do that, I right click and I pick Extract All. And it's going to unzip them pretty much right where they are in Downloads. Okay. And looks like it's going to take a minute or two here to extract. So I'm going to pause you. I'll be back when the extraction's done. And okay, the extraction is done. And it turns out that when we do the extraction, we get this directory called MySQL. And I'm just going to open it up. And these are a lot of things from the book. The book's scripts are if we open that up, for each of the chapters in the book, if you open it up, you can see the scripts, the the SQL scripts that accompany the chapter. So if you want to run the chapter examples, that's where you find them. Okay. There's a directory called DB setup, and we're going to be using that in a minute or two. That's what we use to set up the sample files that come with the book. Diagrams. Let's see, what do we have here? Oh, I'm not sure we used to have that, but these are entity relationship diagrams for two of the databases that come with the book. I don't think we used to have those. Those are new. Uh, the exercise solutions. So there are exercises at the back of every chapter, beginning with chapter 3. And those are not the ones that I'm going to assign for homework. So you're free to use them to practice. And one of the good things is that we have the solutions right here in the files that we were able to download. So we're going to use another set of exercises, and we're going to download the data for that. But I just wanted to let you know that these solutions to the end of chapter exercises are right here in this directory as well. There's a Java folder, which we're not going to use. There's a PHP folder, which we're not going to use. And this MGS-EX starts, the examples, the exercises that we're going to use for our assignments are from a companion set of exercises called My Guitar Shop, MGS. And this is how we load the database for them. So you and I are going to be able to create the database given the files that we have here, but you're not going to have the solutions to the exercise that come with those. Okay? They're kind of parallel to the exercises that are at the end of the chapters. And so finding a parallel end of chapter exercise and looking at the solution of that is a pretty good way to get a hint when you're on your own and stuck and looking for some inspiration for how to do the exercise that's part of the My Guitar Shop set. Okay, now we can't leave this directory in downloads. That's typically a pretty busy place. And the place where in the Murach book he tells you to put it is just in the top of the C drive. So let's do that. So let's highlight this directory and let's get ready to copy it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a couple of copies of the File Explorer. Let's do that. If I can get off here. Okay. My virtual machine's a little bulky when I go to move my windows around. Apologize for that. So there's the directory. And here's another copy of File Explorer. And I want to go to this PC and I want to open the C drive. And as you can see, I've got some things on it already, but I don't have that MySQL directory. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go over where we have it and we're going to pull it and drop it right in the root of the C drive. And there it is. Okay. So it's on local disk C. That makes it easy to find. That's where Murach in the textbook tells us to put it there. And so I think that's going to make sense. Okay, so we've downloaded the files. We've done all that. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to install the databases that are associated with the text. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to want to open up MySQL Workbench, and hopefully during the last tutorial you created a shortcut for it down on your taskbar. If you didn't, then you're going to have to go over to Start, and you find your way to MySQL, and let's just do that for grins. MySQL, and you're going to want to find Workbench and right click, and you're going to want to go to More. Now mine's already pinned to the taskbar, so that's the the equivalent that I have would be to unpin it. But if you haven't pinned it yet, users will say pin to taskbar, and that's how you get it down here. Okay, so let's fire up Workbench. Okay, and how do we load up databases? Well, the way that we load them up is that we run the scripts that load the database. So in our course, we're going to learn how to write a lot of different kinds of SQL scripts, right? And some of the ones, we get back to chapter 10, I'm thinking. By the time we get to chapter 10, we're going to learn how to write a script, kind of like the one that we're going to run right now. So let's do this. Let's click on the connection for the local instance MySQL 80, so, or your equivalent of it. All right. And it's going to bring up Workbench. And we see Workbench here. Okay, and then if we go over to the Navigator panel on the left, you can see that we have a list of schemas. Now, in MySQL, the word schema and the word database are more or less equivalent to each other. So we've got three databases installed: Sequila, Sys, and World. And these are things that we installed during the tutorial when we installed the product. We don't have any of the databases installed that came with the Murach book. So how are we gonna fix that? Well, let's go up. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to go into the editor panel. Let's go up to the tab and close the one tab we have open. Okay, and that's just going to get us a gray panel. Okay, so how do we get a new panel? How do we open a script in a new editor? Well, if we just go up to the toolbar right above the two panels that we've been working in, the second icon is the icon for opening an SQL script. So let's click on that, and then we'll get the dialog to choose the file. And as you remember, we put these files on this PC, so click on that. And then on the C drive, so double click on that. And then in MySQL, so double click on that to open it. Okay, and the first thing that we want to run is DB setup. So that's a directory. Let's open it up. Okay. And if you have installed the most recent version of MySQL, which is version 8, okay, then you're going to want to run the first script, create databases MySQL 5.7 and later. Okay, if you're running some kind of older version of MySQL, you might want to run the second one. Okay, so let's highlight the first one, click the open button. Don't think it heard me, so I'll click the open button again. And here we have the script that's going to install the three sample databases that are talked about in the textbook. And as we can see from the comment up here, they are AP, EX, and OM. AP stands for accounts payable, EX I think stands for example, and OM stands for order management. And in the work that we're going to do, we're certainly going to go through all the examples. The textbook examples, from the most part, are from AP, at least in the chapters that we cover. And there's a thing or two from EX. In the chapters that we cover, we don't really work with OM, but it's there, so we we do it. All right, so how do you run the script? Okay, so I just want to show you around Workbench a little bit more. Okay, so on the left we've got the navigator panel. Right now we've got these tabs. If we click on the left one, we're going to see some administration things, some objects we can use for system admin. If we click on the right one, we have a list of schemas. That's a good one to have up right now. That's how we know the ones that we want A, P, E, X, and OM are not loaded. Okay. Then in the middle, we have the editor panel. On the right, we have this helper panel, which frankly, I don't use a lot. I tend to try to make it as small as I can. Um, in chapter 2 of the Murach book, they talk about some of the functions for the helper panel, and they're kind of cool. It's just not something I spend a lot of time on. Down the bottom, there is a window on the right side here that goes under the editor and the helper panel. And this is kind of a console. This is where the messages that come back from running a script. This is where they show up. Okay, so when we run a script, we go up into the editor, so we can click in the editor. Here's what I like to do. I like to click right at the beginning, and I don't want to be highlighting anything at all. Okay, what would it look like if I highlighted it? Well, if I highlighted the text up top, it would look kind of like that. Okay, so we have that. So I just want to be somewhere in the file in which I haven't highlighted a block of text. And then up here we have two lightning bolts. Okay, I prefer the one that's on the left. Okay, and here's the way the one on the left works. If you have selected some text, then it tries to execute just what you selected. If in fact you have the cursor in a position like I do, some position in the file, but you're not highlighting text, then when you click on the lightning bolt on the left, it runs the entire script. Usually that's what we want. And certainly in this instance, that's what we want. So I've got the cursor in a good spot. I'm going to click the left lightning bolt. Now, when I do that, look down here in the console and see the console output that we get. So we get a lot of console output, and it kind of scrolls. Okay. Now, geez, we can't really see all of it. Now, we could do one of two things. One, we could try to position the cursor, and this is a little off because it's a virtual machine. Try to position the cursor so that we reapportion the windows. Okay, that's one approach. The other thing is we can go into the gray area at the top and double click. Let's see. How can we get this thing to go full? Well, I guess that's not a feature of this current version. Okay, so if you want to see more, you have to get between the two things and pull it up. And then you can see all of this. Generally speaking, if you run a script and you get all green check marks, then the script ran perfectly. If you get a warning, that's these little yellow triangles. It typically something expected has happened, and they're just so. For instance, this is a case where we said we wanted to drop a database OM if it already existed, and the warning is, well, we didn't drop it because it didn't exist. Well, that's a healthy warning. The things that you have to watch out for are red circles. I think they have X's in them, and their errors. Okay, so when we're running our script, whether it's one of the ones that came with the book that loads the database or one that we write during the course, um, if we run the script and we get all green checks, that's perfect. Okay. We can tolerate some of the yellow warning triangles. What we really want to take a look at is if we get one of the red circles with the X in it, well, we probably have some kind of error that needs our attention. Okay, so I'm going to put this back down. And again, the cursor's in kind of a weird spot because of my virtual machine. Yours, I think, will be a little different. Okay. Sometimes I find it helpful after I've run a script, I want to run another one that I will clear the console. So how do you do that? Well, you get over it and you right click and you pick clear, and whoosh, it's clean. I find it helpful before I run a script to have a clean console panel so I can see, I know what came out of the last thing I tried to do. Okay, so we should have three new databases. If we go over and look at the navigator panel, you'll see that they haven't shown up yet, and that's because you need to refresh them. So up here where it says schemas, off to the right is a refresh icon. Click on that, and now we'll see we have O, M, E, X, and AP. They're right where we want them. So those are three key databases that we're going to use. Before we do anything further, um, I want us to install the fourth database. That's the one that we're going to be using for homework exercises. It's called My Guitar Shop, or MGS sometimes. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm going to go back up here. You don't have to close these tabs in the editor until they start to get in your way or confuse you. Okay, so for instance, if we want to open up the next script, we can just go right up here. We can leave that editor tab populated, and let's go up to the toolbar. Click on the second icon, the open script icon, and it tends to take us back. This is a dialog that's kind of sticky. Okay, so this is down in the DB setup. We don't want to be there. So I usually go up and I pick this arrow to go up a level. Okay, and the other database that we want to install is in this directory, mgsex starts. So let's double click on that. Okay, and we're just going to run create my guitar shop. So there's no version for older versions of the server or newer versions of the server. I've already changed this to work on both the older versions and the newer versions. I've done some fix-ups to remove the problems that were incompatible with the new versions of the server. And that's what I gave you to download. So what we want to do is we want to select this create my guitar shop and open it. Okay, and as you can see, it's going to create a database named my guitar shop. And whereas the names O, M, E, X, and AP are nice and short, I think my underscore guitar underscore shop is probably a better named database or schema that turns out to be the name of the business that all this data is about. Okay, and now we're going to run it the same way that we did before. you can see that the cursor, when we first open it, it's not highlighting a group of text. It's just in the upper left-hand corner. So that's a perfectly good place for it to be if we want to run the whole script. And we're going to pick the left of the lightning bolts, the one without the I-beam on it. And we're just going to click, and we can see that around down here, and I see greens. And if I scroll back up, I think we'll see, yeah, we see a warning, but that's it. One warning, all greens. So that's good. So why don't we see it in the navigator panel? Well, because we didn't refresh the schemas yet. So let's go over to schemas, hit the refresh button, and you can see my guitar shop has come up here as well. Okay. Something that I want to point out is that in Workbench, okay, Workbench has a concept of the database or schema that's currently in use. Okay, so the scripts, unless you say otherwise in the script, they are going to refer to the schema that's currently in use. It's usually in bold and dark. So currently, my guitar shop is selected. If we double click on AP, it should select AP. Let's see if that happens. I don't see where it's bolded. So that's a little weird. Set as default schema. Okay, let's try that. Okay, that still doesn't seem to be working. Okay, select, create, drop. Okay, so it turns out that when we learn to create scripts, I'm going to teach you that every script that we have is going to explicitly say which of the databases it's going to use. So it's not going to rely on the selected database feature over here. Now this is interesting. If we double click on my guitar shop, it does actually turn to bold. Okay, so let's look at my guitar shop. You can look at the tables. These are the tables: addresses, administrators, categories, customer, order items, orders, and products. Okay, so when are we going to learn how to use all these features? Well, it's really what Chapter 2 is about. Okay, but before we get there, let's just do some of the easy stuff. If you want to look at a table, put your cursor over the table. So let's look at customers, for instance. When you put your cursor over the table, you'll see these three icons pop up to the right, and you just hover over the one that you want. The one that we want is this data view, which kind of looks like a table. So if we click on this, what's going to happen is it's going to run a query that shows us all the data in this customers table. So let's left click on this. Okay, and what we have is that we've split the editor panel, and the top of it shows the script, which is really pretty short, and the bottom shows the result. Okay, and we can see that there are 8 rows in the customer table. We can see that the columns are customer ID, email address, password, which it looks like it's been encrypted, first name, last name, shipping address ID, billing address ID. I think that's it, but you could see there's a scroll bar here, so we can scroll over. Yeah, that looks like it. If there were more rows, we'd have a scroll bar on the right side. Okay. And this the query that they generated to do this select asterisk from my guitar shop dot customers, is something that we're going to learn how to do in chapter 3. Okay, what we're essentially saying is we want to show all the columns, and then the default is all the rows, and the table that we're pointing to is customers. Okay, so one of the nice things about this tool that I like is that it has a bunch of features where you click on icons, okay, in the graphical user interface, and then it actually builds the SQL query to do the work that you've asked to do. So that it's kind of teaching you how you would do this same kind of thing by hand. So let's look at another one. Let's look at orders. So let's hover over orders, go over here to the right, click on the uh, the data table icon. And again, what it did is it just simply popped up uh, another window in the script editor. It made a real simple script that would show us all of the columns and all the rows in orders. And these are all the columns and all the rows in orders. Now, I think there are 114 orders. Oh, that's not true. There are 114 orders in another one of the database, so there's only 9. So we don't see the scroll bar on the right, but we do see one across the bottom. And you can see that we had a couple of columns that were not showing. In this thing that we have here, you can see that this is the result grid. And there are a couple other modes that you could get into here, but not something that we want to do right now. And okay, so that's that. All right, now one of the things that happens is when you get a lot of these editor tabs up, one of the problems is it gets kind of hard to get to them. They kind of go off the right side. So one of the things I like to do is to close them by going to the tab and clicking on the X. Or you can get over the tab area and right click, and you can say close for the current one, close all like this, close all but this. If I just say close all, it closes them all. Okay, I find I don't have a lot of tolerance for having a lot of them open, especially when we fill up this. Okay, so let's look at the database or schema called AP. Okay, so let's do refresh again just to make sure we have it. And then let's go up and let's open up AP. And something that you'll get here, and I for the life of me, I don't really understand why this happens, but you get this thing where it says it's fetching the tables. Okay, and these tables are not that big, so it should have already fetched them. Okay, so it's still loading the AP database. Let's look at EX. That one seems okay. And then let's look at OM. Tables are fetching on that as well. So here's a trick that seems to work for me, which is to go and close your copy of Workbench. Okay, so we're just going to go up here to the right hand corner and close it. And now I'm going to go down and fire up another copy, a fresh copy of Workbench, by clicking on the icon down here in the taskbar. And usually if I restart it, I'll go back and I don't have that fetching problem again. Now, exactly why it happens, I don't know, but it's kind of bad behavior. So we're going to click on this gray button area for the local instance, and it opens up. Okay, so let's try AP again. And now you can see we have tables, and we open tables, and there they are. Okay, so that's a bug. Now, here's the thing to remember. We're using free software, okay? I'm not sure if there is a paid version for Workbench, but certainly nobody with any sense will pay for something there's a pretty good free version of. But because this is free software and open source software, uh, it tends to be a little buggy. Okay. Now, we as a class, we're going to explore the bugs together. Okay. There's usually enough of us, if we compare notes, we find workaround for all of the problems. And that's an old problem that still persists, and the workaround is to close Workbench and open it again. So here's the AP database, the accounts payable database. This is the one that almost all the examples that we're going to use in the textbook are from. And its biggest table is called invoices. So let's go over and click on the data icon there. And we'll see that. Okay. And a couple things. Every time you run a query, okay, so when we click on those icons, that's just sort of a shorthand. It goes, oh, okay, I'm going to create a tab, put a query in it, and run it. Okay, so it runs the query, and also you can see that we get a line of output down in the console. And one of the things that's really helpful to look at is how many rows are returned. And you might recognize the number. I said that there are 114 rows in the invoices table, and I was confused about which of the databases had 114 rows in the invoices table, and it's AP. And you can see that I got all that I expected. So here's a situation when we look at this result grid that we don't have a slider to go from side to side because it can get all the columns in. But we do have a slider on the right side that goes up and down. And if we go all the way down, we can see 114 rows. Students will often ask, what's this last row with all the nulls? And it's a feature that we don't use in our class, but you might use in the real world. This is a row in which you can actually key in a new row. You can just type, you can click on it and just type in a new row. As soon as you do that, you can either click the apply button, that becomes active, or the revert. If you apply, then you add a row to the table. If you revert, then it forgets about it. Okay, so that's not a feature that we're going to use, but that's why we have all the nulls across the bottom. It's sort of an input form. Okay, all right. Again, that's all you're going to need till we get to chapter 2 and take a little bit more of a tour of this Workbench product. And then in chapter 3, we're going to begin to write queries that return data from a single table. So the examples from the book are going to be using the AP database. Okay, what happens if we double click on this? Okay, now that it's not fetching the table, if we double click, that becomes the default table. You can tell because it's in bold. Okay, and then for our our homework exercises, our coding assignments, we're going to be working with the My Guitar Shop database. And if I double click on this, you can see how this becomes the default. So the default is working as I described now that we have all the data loaded. Um, and I think that's all we need. So we have all the data that we're going to be using for, well, certainly all but the last couple of weeks of the class. We have all that loaded, and we're ready to go. And I'm gonna say bye until next time. So bye bye.